Hello, good morning and welcome to our latest Bath Life Business Club, and thank you for joining us this morning. It's a discussion today with several leading figures in the Bath education sector and sponsored once more by Moja Stewart. We'll shortly be here speaking with our disparate panel covering various areas of education. It's a stellar cast this morning, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some profound insights and some interesting thoughts. Our cast is James Moore from the Egg, Jayne Davis, Bath College, Kate Reynolds, Royal High School Bath, Tim Naylor, Bath Academy, and Victoria Bond, School Guide. It's a terrific list. Thank you for joining us. We'll be discussing the effect of the pandemic on students, teachers, and teaching, of what is new, what might endure. Please do send your questions using the Q&A button below. Today's Business Club will be on our Bath Life YouTube channel this afternoon. Thanks again to our sponsor, Moja Stewart. And first up, let's hear from Maeve England, partner at Moja Stewart. Morning, Maeve. How are you?
Morning, Greg. I'm well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for asking. I was wondering how you and perhaps the Moja Stewart crew are regarding the autumn. Something like the new normal or not yet?
Creeping towards new normal, being cautious, probably like everybody. We're back in the office slightly, so we still have our teams split up so that we don't, so that we minimize risk really, and being careful, observing all the rules that we're meant to still. But in terms of work, pretty busy. Things are not back to normal, but business is, I deal with disputes, so there are some hangover disputes that are now coming to life. For example, a lot of difficulties were parked, such as commercial rents, that sort of thing, and those things are really bubbling up because people have had a hard time and want to get things sorted out.
Well, it's an ill wind when it comes to these disputatious times, I guess, that there's this and salient professional advice to be had in this case from Moja Stewart. I wondered, just personally, as a former teacher, maybe a quick compare and contrast between the legal world and education.
Well, I'm going to start by saying that I did actually love teaching. I thought it was, I taught 11 to 18, and I always thought it was actually a privilege to be part of their lives. And one of the differences is, I think, when you're in education, you're very involved with young people who are, in spite of what everyone, the general public might think, are fun people. They're creative, they're spontaneous, they do things that are unexpected. So life is never boring in education, and being part of that world was fun. And when you are not actively involved with young people, you get to a certain age, I'm sure not for you yet, Greg, but certainly for me, where you disappear to that generation. They don't notice you as you walk past in the street. And so, you know, there are elements that I do miss. One of the things that's similar is, without sounding corny, in education, you can't be involved in education unless you're dealing with people with integrity and respect and genuine interest and having their interests at heart, and all of those skills do transfer actually, because it you know, it might sound a cliche, but it is all about the client. You have to deal with people with respect. You have to act in their best interests and with integrity, and just like in teaching, you have to say things in a way which can be understood properly. And I used to always think in teaching, if I explained something and people didn't get it, the class didn't get it, it's your fault that they didn't get it. It's not their fault. And it's the same thing with clients. There's no point in spiting legalese. They're not interested or paying for a lecture in law. They want to know what they can do, what the risks are, what's the practical way out, and what's best for them.
Well, there's I'm sure those parallels from an explicatory sense are there very profoundly, as you say. I really liked your phrase earlier there. As a teacher, former teacher, it was a privilege to be part of their lives.
I mean that. Yeah, I do.
I'm sure you do. It's a lovely way to frame this discussion. Thank you, Maeve, and all the very best to Moja Stewart in these coming months as we progress as begins to open up and as business begins to flow through. Psychologically, I suspect, even more so once the schools and universities go back, it will feel like the more serious times. Maeve, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Really good, thanks. What a lovely way to start. Some news from Bath Life before we get going on the education piece. Actually, we've got a trio of webinars related to education and all universities in the coming weeks. Our next Bath Life Business Surgery is on Monday, 6th of September, which is very soon, next week on Monday, 11 a.m. with University of Bath School of Management focusing on retail. We've got a very good partnership with the Uni of Bath. Profound insights from an academic but also an applied practical basis as well into various sectors. There's then a Bath Life Presents on Monday the 13th of September, as you can see, with Kingswood School, the headmaster Andrew Gordon-Brown, delving deep into why Kingswood does, what its values are, and of course how it has been navigating with its pupils and team through this pandemic. It'll be a really fascinating long-form discussion. This is a new series of events we're launching called Bath Life Presents, where it's one organisation or company and delving into their values as well as their offering. Likewise, there's a Bath Life Business Surgery on the 27th September with Bath University, and this is across the piece, which I think will be really interesting for many watching this, exploring how the university and Bath businesses can help students given the difficulty, in fact, inability, in many cases, to have work experience and so on, for the obvious reasons in these times. These business surgeries, they're bespoke deep dive sessions showcasing companies' expertise through discussion. Please do talk to us about how you might be involved. They'll continue as virtual in the future with enduring value via our Bath Life YouTube channel. We say business begins with a conversation, so let's talk. Meantime, very pertinently, we have the Bath Life Awards. 9th of September, that's 2 weeks, at the Assembly Rooms, 2 weeks today. You really don't have long left to secure tickets. There's very few left now. Once they've gone, they've gone. We just think that this year particularly, everyone coming together from charities to arts, education, all sectors of business after this year will just be one of the best Bath occasions in ages. These, of course, will be postponed from the Spring 21 awards. Next year, we'll be back in the spring again. Actually, it's March 3rd, and you heard it here first, insofar as that matters. But anyway, we're back onto our spring cycle subsequently. And if you're an ambitious company, one seeking more business, or plain proud to be a leading Bath company, please do consider sponsoring the Bath Life Awards for 22. Effective, efficient, uber glam, of course. Bath Property Awards, they're on the 22nd of October at the Apex, a huge, lovely gathering of property and pro services companies. We revealed our 2021 finalists just yesterday on Grand Reveal Day. You can see the finalists on the site or watch the reveal on YouTube. That also included our latest sponsor, Cox & Cox, who are sponsoring Interior Designer. Please do talk with the Bath Life team about the few remaining sponsorships that are available. Our headline sponsor is Motor Stewart for that. Partner table single tickets are also on sale via the site. There's one other thing about, just to bring to your attention, which is relevant to the rising generation particularly. It's about entrepreneurs. Following our successful inaugural entrepreneurs event, EntreConf, we're holding a special EntreConf dinner on October the 11th at Avon Gorge in Bristol from 7 p.m. Numbers are limited, so because it's going to be quite a select gathering. Please do look at the website if you'd like to go. There'll be networking, a live interview with a leading entrepreneur, and of course an excellent dinner wrapping at about 10 o'clock. It's a great opportunity to meet fellow entrepreneurs and continue those EntreConf conversations in a social setting, followed by coverage in Bath Life and Bristol Life, also the EntreConf site. It's quite apparent in these times that there's been so many businesses started up, including many of the former, the alumni of the education organisations that we'll be talking with soon. It's really interesting how entrepreneurialism has boomed in these times. The heart of all we do is Bath Life, and we're really proud to publish a magazine that celebrates all the good stuff in Bath. Thank you for all your support. It is much appreciated. We all operate within this ecosystem. We can help promote the good stuff that you're doing, and we just love publishing Bath Life and bringing people together. Okay, talking about bringing together, let's do this. Let's bring forward our education panelists individually at first, ahead of the group discussion. First, if we can bring in James Moore, the Head of Education at the Egg, part of the inestimably wonderful Theatre Royal Bath. James, good morning.
Good morning, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. It's very polite, sir. Very good. You're one of the originators of the Bath Theatre Academy concept at the Egg, and you oversee the course and the academy. Tell us about Bath Theatre Academy.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, the Egg is well known for its informal education work, but 5 years ago, we partnered with Bath College to deliver part of their performing arts programme, which we've been building over the last 5 years. We've now got, as of today, enrolment is happening right now, as Jayne might tell us a little bit about later, but as of a few moments ago, it looks like we're going to have about 75 students enrolled on the performing arts course for this year. So it encompasses all of the expertise of the Theatre Royal and all of the educational expertise of the wonderful people over at Bath College, combines them together to offer young people access to industry-led training and I suppose a route into the industry that many schools and colleges can't offer. So we see this partnership as a real positive impact on getting students from education into the world, into the industry, into the theatre business.
And so you say 75. I have no sort of reference point to that. Is that it could be higher? Would you expect more? Have you got capacity?
I mean, when I previously worked as head of education, head of drama in a secondary school, my A-level class was around about 4, sometimes it went up to 10. So having a cohort of 75 sixth form students all studying performing arts is quite high. It's quite a lot.
Substantial.
Yeah,
it's substantial, and that's from all different schools in the wider Baines area, not just Bath itself.
Yeah, indeed, we've got a really wide catchment area, and I think something that one of the best things about the course is its vocational style, its real kind of practical led focus, and it means that we get a wide variety of students, which sits well with the Egg's ethos of theatre being accessible to all people and all young people, certainly.
Yeah, and I know from sort of previous times that the Egg almost approaches it. So it's a strange comparison, almost like election night with all the constituencies mapped out, and every school is a touch point, is a relationship, and so on, and very, very accessible and incredibly valuable work, as much as anything else for self-confidence of young people as well that drama can bring.
Absolutely, and I think now more so than ever, our relationship, not just with Bath College and our partnership there, but with all of the schools locally and even further afield, us establishing our relationship with them is even more important, because I think teachers need the support of their local cultural centres, and that's what we are here to do, and that's what I think going forward is going to be our mission, part of our mission statement, about how we reconnect with schools and ensure that young people have got access to culture after what has been quite a difficult time and left many young people without any access to the arts at all, really.
I have to say, if you're using phrases like quite a difficult time, you'll never be a tabloid writer. But there again, you'd never want to be a tabloid writer, I strongly suspect. So talk about coming up and so on. So what is coming up for the Bath Theatre Academy and the Egg slightly more broadly?
Great. So term starts again for the Theatre Academy in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be kicking off with our learning, which is led by, as I said, industry professionals. We've got a huge team. I think last year, even during the pandemic, our students managed to work with something like 65 different tutors across the year, all experts in their separate fields, all leading on their separate units that we devise with them. For the Egg, we're going to be working, as I said, on reconnecting with our local schools, our local teachers, and ensuring that we can get young people in front of quality art. We've got plays that we've devised, we've created, we've written, that we're going to be touring to schools, and we've also got Kate Cross's wonderful programme of theatre launching again in September for real life theatre that you can come and see in the Egg.
Yeah, I think I'm sure many in Bath will be very proud that the Egg was nurtured, created in Bath, and flourishes so strongly. National level quality, a superb endeavour. And James, all the very best to you. If you step away, as it were, now, we'll bring you back for the panel in the session. And thank you. Let's bring in Jayne Davis, who'll be taking over shortly, next Wednesday, in fact, as Principal and Chief Exec of Bath College. Jayne, good morning. Congrats on your new role, your promotion.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Good. So as a planning assumption, and I can imagine had so many different planning assumptions in times.
Indeed.
It's a dumb question, I'll give you it anyway. How normal will the next term be? Fewer students isolating at least? I mean, what do you
It will be more normal, there's no doubt about that. And I think for education, we, I guess, have been one of the sectors, aside from health, obviously, but one of the sectors that have been able to keep a skeleton normality, you know, so we've been able to stay open even since the first lockdown for more vulnerable learners, and therefore some people have had some normality. However, I think September will be the first time we will be able to offer full face-to-face teaching for most of our young people. We will be able to go back out into the community in our different venues across Baines for our adults. Some of these people, you know, the most disadvantaged and furthest away from employment, you know, it's been really important to keep in touch with those, and now we can go back out and that will be normal. And for our learners with SEND, who, you know, it's very difficult to reach out to when you're online learning. So all of those learners will find it a lot more normal. But I guess what isn't as normal is, you know, lateral flow testing is norm for us now. On-site testing is normal for us, and that will be, I suppose, the continuing hangover with self-isolation that happens well into the term.
Sorry, to cut across on another area. What has changed for you, and what will be changing in terms of perhaps which subjects or areas are more or less popular than previously?
What we found is that young people in particular have been very inspired by the work that the public services have been doing throughout COVID. Our health and social care, for example, numbers went up last year and have rocketed. You know, people are much more, young people are much more keen on going into the caring professions as a result of what they've seen. And I think that the NHS campaigns have been really inspirational to our young people for that. So that's great. We've seen construction trades going up. As James said, performing arts, which we're very, very proud of, it is strong. And some of the sort of sexier subjects like criminology, law, psychology, we're seeing a nice little spike in as well.
Yeah, and it's so encouraging, so inspiring that you know, this generation, the people you and the other panelists are addressing, actually see both maybe an opportunity, but really a responsibility.
Absolutely.
Step up in these times. That's
we're really seeing that.
And I wondered, I mentioned at the beginning about the business surgery we have with Bath Spa University coming up. Businesses might interact with this cohort. What new initiatives are you looking to progress with businesses?
Well, we've already started progressing a number, actually. So we are one of the colleges nationally in the second round of T levels. So that's basically level 3 qualifications for young people, on a par with A level in terms of academic rigor, but very much including employers. So students do 35 to 40 days a year work placement with local employers. So basically they're getting application of the theory that they're learning. So our local employers have been great, and we're still looking for more work placement opportunities. For our adult learners, something really exciting, and it's really a response to COVID economic recovery, is something called boot camps. You would have heard that nationally. So we are currently starting to run digital boot camps with local businesses. This is for adult learners trying to get either change their career or get into work. Welding boot camps. There's a very big demand for welders in this area, not least because of Hinkley Point. We're opening a new facility today, in fact, of a welding facility in order to do that, and other digital things like data visualization and software engineering. So those are two big things that we're doing.
Well, we'll be absolutely delighted to cover in Bath Life that call out to businesses.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And let's get a few, a few specific points, the sorts of companies and sectors. Thank you very much, Jayne. We'll talk with you in a moment. But thank you. Thanks. On to Kate Reynolds, head of Royal High Bath. You joined the Royal High in January 2020, propitiously enough. There you go. So some baptism for you in your new job with the blown pandemic before your first term had finished. How was that then?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. It started so brilliantly, didn't it, Greg? In fact, I was just looking back, my first experience on the 8th of January, so day 2, was the Bath Life Awards down in the Royal Crescent. It was glorious, and I thought, wow, this is a fantastic place to live and work. It changed. But again, I think what was important there was the very fact that this is such a community-focused school, and so we were really able to just understand what the students, what the girls needed in order to carry on working as much as they could. And we switched almost instantly. In fact, we did overnight. On the Friday, we shut the school. On the Monday, we opened up. Everybody was online immediately. So as far as the learning journey was concerned, that wasn't disrupted. But obviously, an awful lot of other things have gone by the way.
Everything else was, yeah. I mean, I wondered, looking in from the outside, I wonder if in some respects, the bigger issues might have been for the Royal High, might have been around certainly borders, but possibly also the pastoral care and of course sporting, but rather than the academic. Is that how it looked for you or was for you?
I think there's elements of both, but I think looking at the areas you've identified, as boarding was a phenomenal learning curve. You know, we have boarders from 17 different countries. You start playing with red, amber, green, and inoculations and quarantining, very, very complex. But again, you just adapt very quickly. We created our own Nightingale wing, and we've now got this wonderful resource that we're able to turn into a wellbeing centre as a result. So we just shifted with the times, and it meant certainly with things like pastoral, we got a whole team of staff who became wellbeing angels, 22 of them. And they were there specifically to look after the girls, the students, those regular check-ins, either online or physically. And we extended that to also looking after the staff, because unless staff and girls are happy and settled, they're not learning, they're not progressing.
I can't imagine for a moment they have any spare seconds, but if those 22 wellbeing angels had any capacity, I'm sure there's many people in Bath who would welcome that conversation. But talking about the team, particularly for you, you know, you have this baptism as far as I say. Has motivation been more difficult for the team? Because of course all the changes, but simply, you know, their roles have effectively changed.
I think motivation has impacted everybody. We've all had these ups and these downs. The fact that teaching is so vocational, and the staff here are so dedicated to supporting the girls, really building those strong relationships. We realized that's what we needed. So when your sort of mojo, as it were, went down, you realized you needed that interaction with each other, with students. So we just highly create, you know, be it the online staff quiz, which was bizarre, surreal, anything else you want to call it, to all sorts of activities. And then the girls started to lead that as well, because we're really key here on Girls' Voices, girls leading, it's their school. So they said, right, we want a film night. Great, go and organise it. We want to do a quiz. Fine, how can we help you? It's their school. And so it was lovely to actually empower them. And that lifted everyone's energy as well.
How about so? It's a similar question that I asked Jayne about the coming year, but are you doing this coming term perhaps with more equanimity than trepidation?
It's so exciting. We've ripped off all those stickers that are one way, that are different zones. So yes, it's really exciting. Everybody's coming back and everything has opened up. Now, that's not to say that there will be issues. You know, we'll have girls and staff who will need to then work from home. That's all set up. So all of that should be seamless. I think what's really exciting now is that everything else that the Royal High School is about will come back into full play. So all our clubs and activities can happen again, and they can go across zones. And here, what's been so missing is, for example, all our year 12s, our lower 6th, are trained mentors to look after the younger girls. And they've only been able to do that remotely. So the fact they can then meet them face to face. We've got 2 years of students now, 2 years worth of students who just haven't seen whole sections of the school, don't know who the other staff are. So that whole sort of opening up and then realizing their opportunities. And it's going back to what I say to them all over and over again. Just say yes to everything. The whole point of coming to a school like the Royal High School Bath is all the opportunities you've had. So that'll be our focus from day one next week. Just do it all.
Just do it all. Say yes. If not carpe diem, then just, you know, take the opportunity, whatever it may.
Absolutely, go for it.
Go for it, as indeed you've gone for it this morning by telling us about the Royal High. Thank you very much, Kate. We'll have you back in a moment if that's okay for the panel session. But thank you for that.
Thank you.
Let's bring in Tim Naylor. Perhaps conversely, over 10 years, is it, Tim? Hello, as a principal.
Yes, 10 years as principal of Bath, and I was about another 4 years vice principal in a similar college in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So it's yes, I've seen lots of changes over the years.
And whatever wide experience you've undoubtedly had in state and independent schools and colleges and so on.
That's right. So I started teaching.
Nothing really compared to you for this.
Undergraduates, actually, forensic psychology, and then ended up teaching A-level in a very large further education college in Yorkshire, becoming programme manager for A-levels and GCSEs, then became vice principal of a similar independent sixth form college in Birmingham, and then 10 years ago, principal here in Bath, with again a similar college, though it's changed quite dramatically in the time I've been here. I think originally when I came, it was largely international students doing the equivalent of an access to higher education course to go to British universities. Now it's we're a very small college. We can take normally we take about 100 students a year. 70% are local students or from within travelling distance of Bath doing A-levels and some doing GCSEs. And 30% are international students from here, there and everywhere, some doing GCSEs and some doing this kind of access to higher education program called the University Foundation Program, both for sort of business and science related degrees and medicine.
And how many, I mean, approximately, how many teachers and you know, what are the sort of, talk a little bit about the range of courses.
Yes.
Are they almost exclusively academic? Is that?
Yes, they're entirely academic. So the vast majority of courses are A-levels in one form or another. So we do resit courses for students who've done A-levels but want to get into a more competitive university, or they want to change direction and pick up a new course. So, for example, last year we had somebody who suddenly wanted to do medicine and came and did biology A-level in a year and got an A star. And went off. Well, in fact, he had 2 unconditional offers for medicine, which was a nice position to be in. So we have students like that. Then we have probably the majority of A-level students now are people doing A-levels over 2 years. And then we also run a resit course from January to June for people who just want to resit and get better grades. We also run GCSE courses. And in fact, the GCSE courses and the 2-year A-level courses have over the last 2 years expanded rapidly because and correspondingly the number of people wanting to come and resit has dropped dramatically because nobody took any exams, so they didn't need to resit any.
We'll come on to the exams point with the wider panel in a moment.
Sure.
I don't want to oversimplify or give the impression it's been straightforward, because of course it hasn't been. But given that your range is academic, has it in a sense been slightly easier for you than perhaps the Royal High and other schools where there isn't quite the same sort of pastoral and sporting and other issues?
Well, actually, I'd say the pastoral side is a very strong part of the college, precisely because we're so small. I mean, we are a tutorial college, and the emphasis is very much on a personal approach to each individual student. So we have no year groups. We just take each individual student. Here is Joe Bloggs. This is where he is now, and that's where he wants to go. And so we will find a way to get him there, basically. So the pastoral support is very, very strong. We don't have form groups. Each student has a personal tutor that they meet with every week on a one-to-one basis. And their sort of remit is quite broad. So for one thing, academically, all our students do a mock exam under exam conditions in every subject every week. So the personal tutor's job is to track those results and make sure that the student is on track to get the grades they're capable of getting. On the pastoral side, I think one of the things that all schools has been brought home to schools anyway, both here and abroad, is that good teaching and learning just isn't enough. It's also the teachers and students' mental health and well-being generally that has become even more of an issue, really. And when we went into the first lockdown, I say apart from the sort of normal personal tutoring side, we had far more extracurricular activities going on online than we had when we were actually on site. So we had an online pub quiz. We had Russian lessons for people who wanted to pick up Russian. We had online yoga classes. And for the staff, we had daily staff meetings in the evening at the end of the day at 7 o'clock, which was partly to do with just supporting one another, but also sharing best practice, because for a lot of teachers, suddenly moving literally overnight from face-to-face teaching in a classroom to everything being online, because we just carried on teaching the whole timetable online from day one. For a lot of teachers, that was an entirely new experience, and getting their heads around using Zoom and other platforms was quite a steep learning curve.
The pandemic has opened doors in buildings that people didn't even realise existed, perhaps.
That's right, and also new needs as well. So we're at the moment we are running in the college courses for students who've finished GCSE this summer from many different schools and are going on to do A levels, but haven't necessarily finished the whole of the GCSE syllabus. So it's a matter of making sure that they're in assessing where they are and how much do they know and their skills have developed, to put them in a good place to be doing A levels in their schools in September, and also students who've done the first year of A level, but just because of the sort of moving backwards and forwards to being in lockdown and back in school, we're running classes for those to go back over the first year of A level material and start anticipating some of the second year material, so that they're feeling confident when they start in September.
And talking of anticipating, I'm anticipating Victoria Bond joining us very soon. So if we call a halt to this part, and we'll have you back for the panel in just a second. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Victoria, yes, Chief Exec and founder of School Guide, based in Bath. Morning, Victoria, how are you?
Good morning, Greg. How are you? You're a head boy this morning.
No, stop it. Don't do it. Don't do it this way. It's me outwards, not that way around. So School Guide, based in Bath, one of the most comprehensive, as it were, resources in the UK for parents looking for the right school for their child. So tell us about School Guide. I mean, has it been more or less important for parents, given the deep concerns, almost existential concerns over education?
I think it's been really important. I mean, as you said, we're a very comprehensive guide. We aggregate data on 34,000 schools in the UK. So it's not just Bath. We have a unique data set. We pull in exam data, we pull in Ofsted ratings, we pull in catchment area heat maps. We have softer metrics such as happiness ratings, and we put everything in one place online so that parents can come along and quickly and easily find the best schools for their child. And while parents have had a lot more time at home and online, and we've all got a lot more familiar with our little laptops, it's quite hard to get. Parents want to know that they're not missing out on any information. This is one of the most important decisions that you will ever make as a family, and they need to know that they've covered all the bases, and that's what we do.
So given this absolute welter of data and information and insight and experience and so on and so on, I'm going to ask an incredibly simplistic question. You probably guess what's coming. Are there any discernible differences in how schools have adapted across the country? Maybe private schools have more resources, perhaps, or larger enterprises have more opportunities? Any regional differences?
I mean, there's been huge differences. I mean, disadvantaged pupils have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. There's postcode differences. We know that lost learning is increased in the north of England, for example. I mean, we're very, very lucky here in Bath with the educational provision that we have. And of course, I would be lying if I didn't say that I have lots of parents calling me up very concerned that their kids that are not within the private sector are missing out. That was perhaps a little bit slower to move online. Perhaps the teachers were less supported. There was less provision support to create effective lessons. But at the end of the day, the kids, no matter what school you're in, they have missed out on the experience of school. And that's not just what happens in the classroom, that's being with their friends, That's the after school clubs, that's sitting in the playground and going through the banter, you know, at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. This is the stuff that they have all missed out on.
Yeah, and that's one subset of that is exactly why we're keen to run this piece with Bath by Uni about how businesses can help be responsible to play their part more so than ever previously for this cohort.
Absolutely. I mean, I speak to a lot of universities and they're deeply concerned about the lack of work experience and life experience that pupils are coming up university. You know, the kids just haven't had that experience, and also the students at university have missed out on placements, they've missed out on their years abroad. It's really going to impact on the workplace. It's going to take many, many years for the impact to kind of wash down through the system, really.
We'll come on to that in a sec, excuse me. One last for you, perhaps. No names, unless you wish to. But what particularly smart approaches have you seen in some schools in terms of how they have adapted or changed their offering?
I think there's two things. I think, you know, it's not necessarily being smart, it's being realistic. So I think particularly at the end of last term, the government guidelines with regards to running something as simple as a sports day were perplexing. And I was very impressed with the schools that kind of took, you know, they refused to buy into the council culture. They put in a mammoth amount of effort to put on something like a sports day, which is just a bit of normality for the kids and was incredibly important. So the schools that are brave enough to do that, but also the schools who realise that it's not just the maths and English that kids have missed out on. So we've talked about some wonderful wellbeing provision in some of the schools in Bath, but also, again, PE, getting out into the playground, and also the reality of some schools, and there are schools like this in Bath, where the teachers have gone to school a couple of hours earlier and they've made packed lunches and they've delivered them to the doorsteps of children that otherwise might not have had a lunch that day. And these are the things that are smart and will keep our kids going, and are the things that are really, really important to consider alongside a lot of the discussions at the moment about grade inflation. We're going to return some rigour into the examination system.
In the worst of times, people have shown their best, and it's been marked in education as in other areas. So if you stay on, as it were, Victoria, we'll welcome back the other panellists. Hello again. Thanks for joining again. With this question, of course, none of us would have wished this pandemic, of course, but what have been the positives for teaching and the taught in these times? Who'd like to offer a thought? Yeah, Jayne, I mean, just dive in. Yeah, we're in the classroom.
I know, I've been a teacher for a long time, I can't help it. Yeah. So I think that acceleration of digital skills for some staff, and you know, it's obvious, you know, Victoria just mentioned it. For us also, transferring things like welfare support to online. So in the first lockdown, you know, we didn't see much uptake of it. By the second, they were overrun. So it's allowed us to be more flexible in our new approach now. So we've got some new ideas about really skillful online learning that inspires students and is really innovative. So it's been a real positive for us.
Yeah, some other thoughts. Oh, please, honestly, I'll get embarrassed if you put your hand up. Stand up being called the bloody head boy from Victoria. Say what you want.
I think the parents, if I may, I speak to parents all the time. I mean, online open days has been fantastic. It's really difficult to make your final decision based on an online open day, I have to say, because you want to get in there, you want to smell the locker room, you want to look at the whites of the eyes.
You want to smell a locker room? You bloody don't, do you? I mean,
but you know, that's been a real positive, and I think it's a way that shortlists will be created going forwards. And the main thing that parents have absolutely loved is online parents' evenings. So none of this waiting in corridors for thousands of hours, missing your appointment, having to wear your trainers to dash between appointments. You get your slots, you go on there. Okay, it's limited to 5 minutes and then you get cut off. But I think there are some innovations that parents really, really would like to keep.
That parents' evening thing is now sort of a faintly distant memory for me, but that sense of walking up and down the corridor, think, yeah, it's fine, everyone's fine. Everyone is saying everything is fine, and whether it is or not, who knows. How about some other positives that you've taken? Of course, the remote learning, of course, the opportunity for one-on-one and perhaps a deeper engagement in some cases. Other points?
I think students themselves have learned so much. I know we've rightly been focused on mental health and there's been a lot of concerns, but seeing what the vast majority of the students have been capable of during lockdown gives them that power. They really have been phenomenally resilient. They've been quite bold in their ideas. You know, we had one girl that has created this entrepreneurial link so people can buy products through their business near them. And so all these ideas that perhaps wouldn't have happened had they been in a traditional school setting, they've had that freedom to experiment. And we've seen some really amazing things come as a result. And I suspect that's across the whole range. It's very easy to focus on the negatives. I think it's so important with this generation of students to say, you've been phenomenal with what you've done. Yes, it's different, but you're going to make the most of that in a totally new direction. And that example of the IT skills is just one part of that.
I think
the prompted adaptability, James.
I was just going to say, building on what Kate just said, we at the Egg used that time to look at our model, and we're a building where young people come into what were we going to do, how are we going to serve our young people, and we wanted to look at adapting, but more so than that, we wanted to look at evolving. So the Egg actually spent a lot of time working with the Innovate UK Fund, built a new web platform, looked at a learning environment as not being what it used to be and being something so much broader and bigger and better than what we were offering. And over the course of the pandemic, looked at what we were offering our performers and dipped into things we never would have dipped into before, introductions to virtual reality performance, creating soft robotics, lighting design in your home or sound design in your pocket. These were the courses that we were creating in that moment of evolving, I think. And it was exciting. It was an exciting thing to go through and to look at our model and how we could build it, how we could make it better, and how we can learn from it. And those are the things that I think are going to be so important moving forward, how we don't just go back to normality, how we do embrace this blended learning model as much as we possibly can, how we do reach out to people across the globe and offer our young people learning that is more than we could offer from our classrooms. And we've been forced to do it, but what a joy it's been to see the
prompted joy. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and to broaden that point out to the others, of what you have learned, and applied, of course, what might endure. We've, the hybrid model, as James has talked about. What else do you think might endure in terms of an approach to teaching and the taught?
Sorry, I think for me the thing that came home to us was just the need for innovation and creativity, because things kept changing so often that we kept having to adapt what we were doing as we were going along to meet the different needs. So from starting to teaching purely online to then we had a sort of hybrid model of 60% in the classroom and 40% online, then back in totally face-to-face, but then dealing with people who'd been pinged and couldn't come to lessons because they were quarantining, so they're doing blended learning. Though I think what I've been hearing from parents certainly is that what they want now is face-to-face teaching. Yep. They don't really want online learning if they can help it, to be honest. Though of course it has lots of different potential, and for us, a lot of our the way we work is driven by what's happening in higher education, and as the business model for higher education has had to change and will be changing for the foreseeable future with the use of online learning, largely because I suppose the international student market has diminished so much, and therefore they want to get as many home students as possible and expand that, and also because of all the social distancing restrictions, having to adapt to that and pupils' expectations and perhaps more, I suppose, a more discerning approach to their university applications now, what they're actually getting for their money, is another aspect that schools are having to adapt to.
And that adaptation point and accommodation of hybrid, there are parallels in multiple other areas. For example, in media, television was going to destroy radio, or movies going to be destroyed by Netflix, or magazines would be inhibited by the web, or whatever. There's an accommodation where it's far too early to tell what that exact balance will be between remote and
yes, and there's a huge expansion in online schools at the moment. I mean, I think the recent estimate is that across the world, online schooling is now, or by 2025, will be worth £450 billion. And small online teaching schools are being bought up by larger education companies at a rapid rate.
Well, there you are. There's a top tip of futurologizing, of entrepreneurial and education all in one go. I want to come to the nature of teaching, if I may. I wondered how that has changed, not just the Zoom and the remote and so on, but the way that teachers teach and indeed students learn. And Kate, perhaps bring you on this one.
Actually, that links usefully with what I was about to mention as well. We've been looking really at the sort of schools of the future. What's the school look like now that we've had this experience? And something that became so apparent with the use of things like Teams, you'd have these breakout rooms and there'd be phenomenal discussions amongst the students that you could sort of eavesdrop into and realise how empowering it was to leave them to lead. And so we started experimenting here with maths, for example, which is our most popular subject. And we've totally redesigned these classrooms to look like a classroom of the future with the whole wellness concept as well. It's not just what you're learning, it's the environment you're in that helps you learn. And it's not sitting in serried ranks necessarily facing the front that is what you need. So we've got these breakout areas. We're going to have sort of whiteboards all around so that it's much more learning in very different styles. And I think that understanding of how students learn, we're constantly evolving, how the neuroscience and our appreciation of that is so important to students making the most progress. So that's really exciting to us, the schools of the future, which is not only the environment you're in here, but also what else is out there. So this idea that when we've got 30,000 alumni that are signed up to help mentor our current students, and they're giving these phenomenal talks, be it that you want to be an entrepreneur or a journalist or an astrophysicist, and we could only really access those if they came to Bath. But now that they're happening over the 25 schools in the Girls' Day School Trust, we can all access them. So it's that idea of just broadening the opportunities for everybody. Really exciting.
Really exciting. So let's come to this aspect of from a student's perspective. Do you broadly buy the argument that this is a generational change, that a whole cohort of students has been deeply and deleteriously affected, or do you think, and this is it's posited as either or, there's many grades in between, or do you think the resilience of students and the adaptability of educational organisations such as yours mitigates most, if not all, of those negatives? What do we think about the longer term impact of this? Perhaps Jayne, if I could ask you on that one.
Thank you. I think you're right. I think it is somewhere in between what you've just described. And I mean, for some well-supported students with a strong base at home, some have flourished and, they've spent time with their families. It's all been great. For others, particularly in the first lockdown, we've got students who had to spend 24 hours a day with very troublesome family backgrounds where going home on a regular basis is bad, staying home is particularly bad. And I think for some of those, let's face it, children, even though they are 16, 17, I think the impact has been great. And I don't think, and this is not me being negative, I'm not that sort of person, but I don't think we've seen it yet. I don't think we've seen the aftermath. So I think we all as educationalists need to in fact adopt a trauma-informed behaviour to all students, because I don't think everybody knows how it's affected them, including adults like us sitting around this table. So I think it is somewhere in between, and I've seen students thrive and I've seen students suffer greatly. And I think what we do as educators, though, has a massively positive impact because we support them. Sometimes, we called our daily safe space, because they felt safe coming in to see us. They liked being there, and I think we are a safe space, all of us here, for our learners. So I think, and sometimes for our staff. So I think, yes, we all do a great job in doing it, but I don't think we've seen the impact, and B, it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, it is. We're not even close to being what it is. It'll be a while yet. James, your experience of this, what do you think? It is impossible, of course, but the sort of generational impact of this. So are you fundamentally concerned?
Yeah, I think we are. I think there's an awful lot of discussion in the education sector at the moment about catch up and about how we catch these students up with what was lost, this kind of lost generation, the losses in education, the losses in experience. We're particularly worried about a cultural loss, a cultural, a lack of things in your cultural backpack, as it were, that lead to many different aspects of your life being improved, but also psychological aspects like empathy and how you connect with each other and how you form relationships and bonds that happen so naturally within a drama classroom or within any classroom really, but really our focus is on that creative catch-up. And I think that there is going to be a great deal of work to be done, an investment that's going to be needed from us to catch these students up and to enrich their lives in the same way that we were able to enrich pre-COVID. And I think, you know, we've all spoken about the wonderful and far-reaching benefits of online learning, but those connections, those personal moments are the things that we're going to need to dig deeper in, because I think that will have a profound impact, as you said.
I mean, one of the paradoxes of the pandemic, and it particularly applies to your point about empathy, to some extent applies to curiosity as well, two vital aspects of discovery for young people particularly. One of the paradoxes is we've never been further apart, and yet we are closer still because of this ability, as we're doing now, this sort of conversation itself, and this is pretty minor with respect, but you know, would not have happened previously. Could I come on to the exam point, which has been touched on a couple of times? I mean, clearly, there's been much criticism of the government's approach to exams in 2019 and again in 2020 and 2021. The first featured the sort of lurching and lack of clarity. The second had what is reasonably widely deemed to be grade inflation. What would you have wished had been done differently? So, Tim, you're teetering on the brink of telling us everything. I can see you're.
Well, if I had any hair, I'd be pulling it out, I suppose. But well, what do you say? It's very easy for me to start criticising the Secretary of State for Education. But if I was in his job, would I have done anything any better?
That's the question, really. Yeah.
No, nobody was rushing to appoint me as Secretary of State. It's where do you begin, really? I mean, one thing I will say, and I'll be a bit controversial, is that whatever we do in the future, unless, and I'm really talking about A levels and academic things, because that's just the background I come from, they never seem to grasp the nettle, which is that we're using things like A levels and other qualifications for two very different purposes. One is to kind of accredit what people have learned and the skills they've developed. And the other is as a ranking system for university entrance. When I did A levels, you know, back in the mists of time, basically it didn't matter how good or bad your A level answer was. You got a grade based on whatever percentage you were in the rank order of candidates. So, you know, the top 8% of students got an A grade. However good or bad their answers were nationally. Then that changed to becoming really a system of accrediting what people knew. And now we've got a sort of a hybrid system. And we probably need two different ways of doing those two different jobs, really.
Yes.
And the other thing is, if you build an education system which prizes grades above everything else, then that's what schools will deliver.
Yeah.
And you know, so it's all right saying, you know, we want better teaching and therefore better grades, and then when we do get better grades, saying, well, it's all grade inflation, how terrible. You can't have it both ways.
We can't have it both. It's complex, and maybe this, you know, I'll bring you in, Victoria, in a sec, but maybe this whole experience has been a sort of a cattle prod to us all to work out what actually matters, what education is for. Victoria.
I mean, I think there's a definite movement and questioning around the purpose and the benefit of formal exams. You know, should these high stakes exams that happen, you know, you get one shot at the end of the year, I think the conversation around them being phased out is really important. The Education Secretary is very keen for exams to come back because he says it's the fairest way for children to be assessed, but he's talked about a glide path back to formal exams. And I think what's really critical right now for pupils and schools is to get some sort of clarity. We still don't know how the GCSE and A-level pupils are going to be assessed next summer. The consultation closed in June. We're waiting. The schools are going back next week and they don't know how they will be assessed. So I think clarity is really important, strong leadership, and let's just sort out how we're going to test pupils going forwards. Is that going to change? And let's let everybody know what on earth's going on.
So Kate, clarity begins at home, but that's a start. What else would you wish?
I was going to say, what's been interesting with the exam side is we do the International Baccalaureate here as well as the A-level. And that's a really good example of how things can work really well. And they've approached the exams completely differently. And they also give credit to not just exams knowledge. You know, you get marks for doing extended essay, you do your volunteering, your community work. And if we could just look at what we're doing, as Tim said, and stop looking at just the academic side, but the whole skill set, and reward those soft skills in some way, that would make such a difference. And I think that we are ripe for that. We're ready for that now. The university entrance procedure is being reviewed. We're being consulted on what happens next with GCSEs and A-levels. Please just let's make it happen.
Do you feel it's unfair on well, all schools, but particularly your pupils, that there is this widely deemed grade inflation? Does that annoy you, that critique? I'll ask you, Kate, and perhaps Jayne on this one.
As you know, like Tim, it's been utterly frustrating, but I don't think there's any benefit to looking back and saying, well, it should have been done like this. I think what we have to do now is consider what's best for the students to make sure that they're not disadvantaged in the future, and for the government to listen to the experts who are the teachers. We know what we think will work better, and I think a good place to start would be GCSEs. Why are we testing our students age 16 and 18?
That's a question. Don't look to me for an answer. How about you, Jayne? What do you think?
I think you know, a slightly different perspective from the college's point of view. Obviously, GCSEs is something we do. They tend to be resits. And I think what we've experienced is probably not answering your question directly, but what we've experienced is vocational exams, because actually we do have exams in vocational areas, have been very much an afterthought. So announcements about GCSEs and A-levels, so FE colleges waiting, what's happening with vocational, GCSEs being cancelled for the exam session in 2021. Functional skills, which is what most vocational or lower level learners and adults do, carried on doing exams. So these are the people who'd failed GCSE, already disadvantaged, had to go back to do exams, and it was all a bit of a mess in that way, I think. And so I think whatever we do, and I agree with what everyone said, whatever we do, we just have to make sure that there's the least disadvantage, because those students that leave school with GCSEs go on to do other things. If the grades are inflated, does that mean we're going to put them on the wrong course at 16, 17, 18? You know, so it is a bit an issue, but we just have to move forward now, I think, and try and, you know, use those consultations as opportunities for us to tell the government what we need from it.
Yeah, well, time has rocketed, and for you in education, you know how lessons and such like really matter, and the end is looming. I've got one last question for you each, really, and perhaps begin with you, James, and then Jayne, and then Tim, and Kate, and then with Victoria. How would you have been in these times, at the age of 16 or 18 or beyond, if you were that one of your students, these students now? How would you have responded personally to this experience, James?
Gosh, that's hard. I think I was such a social creature as a 16-year-old. I was desperate to be around my friends. I was desperate to be on stage, just like many of my students are. And so I would have been clawing at the screens, trying to get through into reality, and just desperate to be back in a room, desperate to be around other humans and to have that contact, really. So yeah, that would have been me as a 16-year-old, desperate to be back in the room. But open to the new experiences, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, Jayne.
As a 16-year-old, I think growing up in a very small village, the change in terms of being able to socialize was probably not as big as others in cities. But I think I would have struggled, actually, if I'd been my 16-year-old self in the age of social media and seeing what's happening. I think I would have absolutely struggled and not been as confident as some of the kids I've seen coming through, and not as resilient.
That's very honest. Thank you. Tim, how might you have been around that age?
Well, when I was 16, I was sat in a boarding school in the middle of the North York moors, really listening to the Velvet Underground and drinking beer I'd stashed away under the bed from my house.
Were you really into the Velvets in those days, or was that?
I was, yeah, sadly. Yes, I mean, the ideal answer would have been, yes, I'd have risen to the occasion like our students have this year and done extremely well. But sadly, I was a typical male student and, you know, spent most of the year doing very little and then pulled my finger out at the last minute. But luckily, you know, I think students today are probably a little bit more focused than I was, you know, back in the 1970s.
Yeah, well, there you go, Kate. Can you beat the Velvets and beer under the bed as a story?
I'm not going to commit to anything like that. I think I probably would have done a lot more of the sort of solo creative side of things, you know, the music and the writing and things. But goodness, you would have missed out on the relationships that, you know, now, only 20 years later, I pretend, are so important. And that's the sadness, isn't it? The formative relationships you build age 16.
Yeah, or indeed younger. You know, personally, some of my best friends are some of the first people I met almost those years back. How about you, Victoria? The age of 16 or so, how might you have been?
I think I would have been one of the girls who has benefited from lockdown, because there's been a real shift. Sport England have put a lot of research out about the boys that do team sports and are used to rugby and football and jumpers for goalposts. They've stopped doing everything. The girls who traditionally give up everything. So me at 16, I don't want to go to ballet school anymore, Mum. Thank you very much. I think I would have been one of the girls that got into Zoom and did online yoga and did all the classes. And some of the girls have really benefited from that. So I think with Duran Duran playing on the hi-fi in the background, that probably would have been me.
Okay, strictly personally, I think Tim wins the cool factor. Duran Duran,
First time ever.
That's just me. Yeah, there's an accolade too. We are going to call a halt to it. Just that last question of itself reveals, first of all, the empathy. It's like a sort of form of empathy. This is what others are going through, what you might have gone through, but also the diversity. That this is not singularly experienced. We've all been in the same storm, but we really are not in the same boat, and that's been very clear today as ever. Thank you to our speakers today. We will call a halt now. Thank you to James Moore of The Egg, Jayne Davis of Bath College, Kate Reynolds at Royal High School Bath, Tim Naylor, Bath Academy, and Victoria Bond, School Guide. Thank you for all of you watching today and also on the YouTube version as well. Thanks likewise to our Business Club sponsor, Motor Druid, and to Maeve England. And thank you for all of you for your support for Bath Life as well. And we look forward to seeing many of you in real life at the Bath Life Awards on September 9th. Good luck to you all in the coming months, and thank you. This has been
very much.
And this has been the latest Bath Life Business Club. Bath together, always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.